and she's going to tell you exactly why we're here today, and what this is all about, and what it means to the public health of the people that live in this area, and all throughout the city, as a matter of fact. Rosalie?
Yes. Well, we've called this press conference because in a couple of weeks, the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection will be announcing whether or not they're going to grant a permit for Wheelabrator to expand the life of this landfill for another 5 to 10 years. So the reason why we're here is we're calling on Governor Baker and Commissioner Suberg to deny their request to expand and to put another 500,000 tons of ash that contains mercury, dioxins, lead, and other pollutants. So, and in light of what just happened in the January 4th storm, this whole area was flooded. It was underwater in the January 4th storm. Both sides of this facility, both sides of that ash landfill that they're going to open and put more ash in it, was totally flooded. You couldn't get through. The roads were closed. 1A as well as 107 was closed from Revere to Lynn for almost a whole day. So it doesn't make any sense to me, and how hypocritical that an agency whose core mission is to protect the environment is going to allow an expansion. I hope that they don't perform the way they have been. Guess what? We're going to get an ash landfill. Not to mention, we are environmental justice communities. This river and this ash landfill is less than a half a mile from my constituents and John's constituents' home. And I want to say thank you, John, too, because you've been a true advocate for our district. So thank you for that.
My name is Peter Manugian. I live at 50 Ballard Street, Saugus, and we've been fighting this for over 30 years. And we're very concerned about the expansion, and it's a never-ending story. Things that are allowed in Saugus wouldn't be allowed anyplace else in the state. With global warming and rising tides and what we now know about the environment and the effects of the residue, this shouldn't be allowed. And I call on the governor and his administration to put a stop to this, as it should have been done in 1996.
There is no liner under this landfill, and as you can see, this is all marshland surrounded by rivers. It is resting in water. Then in the mid-70s, after Wheelabrator Saugus opened its incinerator, they began dumping incinerator ash, over 100,000 tons a year, here on top of that. Again, no liner system. As Representative Vincent said, it was supposed to close in 1996 because it didn't have the protective systems required at that time by the law, by the federal law. Yet it still continues to be open. When we looked for groundwater monitoring data to find out, okay, what exactly is leaving this system? If there's no liner system at all, what is being emitted? What contaminants are being released into these rivers? We found that there are no groundwater monitoring wells around this facility. So in Massachusetts, this is the only municipal solid waste or ash landfill that I'm aware of, and I've looked at them all, that doesn't have groundwater monitoring, that's accepting waste into unlined cells, and is in an area of critical environmental concern of marshland. You couldn't build a deck on this property, and yet they want to rip up 39 acres and put 500,000 tons of ash here. It's unconscionable. This expansion should be stopped, and I hope that the governor and Mass DEP hear us today and don't grant the permit to expand this landfill. Thank you very much.
Okay, we'll next call on Joan LeBlanc, who's been a crusader for this environmental injustice almost her entire life. She's from the Saugus River Watershed Council. Joan LeBlanc.
Good morning, everyone. I'm the director of the Saugus River Watershed Council. We're a nonprofit organization. Our mission is protecting and restoring the natural resources of the Saugus River Watershed. Looking out here, this is the Pines River, a major tributary to the Saugus. This whole site is part of the Rumney Marshes area of critical environmental concern. I'm very disappointed that we have to be here today, to be perfectly honest with you. We shouldn't be here discussing a possible expansion at this site. for many reasons. And I'm going to call your attention to the context of something that's been in the news very frequently lately, and that's climate change and sea level rise. Just Monday, we heard from a group of top scientists reporting through the National Academy of Sciences. They reported that, and this is not a political report, this is not a projection, it's not a model. They looked at satellite data. So they used actual information from satellite imagery to look at sea level rise from 1993 coming forward. The result of that analysis is that by the end of this century, we're going to see up to 2 feet of sea level rise in this region by the end of the century. Now, with that context in mind, there is no scenario, there is no level of engineering or planning that could mean that it would make sense to rip open 39 acres of capped landfill that's currently covered with bird habitat in order to reactivate it in this type of a site. To make matters worse, the part of the landfill that they're talking about ripping up is the part that's closest to the water. So if you look here across the Pines River and you see what looks like a grassy knoll, if you're driving by, you might say, oh, you know, this is lovely, we see a grassy knoll here. But for those of us who know what's in this unlined landfill, we know that this is a potential environmental disaster in the future. And we know that closing and capping isn't even enough. We need to close and cap this landfill today, but we also need to take a close look at what can be done to protect people in the future. If 10, 20 years down the road we have the type of bombogenesis storm that we had, and it's combined with the highest tide level of the season and a storm surge, we could see major damage everywhere along the coast. We could see a breach in this landfill. Now, you heard a little bit about the Rumney Marsh's area of critical environmental concern. This is a salt marsh. This is in the middle of the estuary. The estuary provides the foundation for the food web of this entire ecosystem. If this is contaminated, then you can assume that every fish, bird, and mammal feeding in this region would also be contaminated. I also don't know of any cleanup methods that could address ash that is washed throughout a system like this. I am not aware of a cleanup that would cover that. But what I am aware of is that we can make decisions today, decisions that will help minimize the problem. One of those decisions is a decision that the Governor's Office and the Department of Environmental Protection is currently facing. And that decision is whether or not to allow an expansion here. We say no. We say it's a no-brainer. This needs to be capped and closed and contained to protect people and to protect wildlife. Because this is just one sample. There are landfills and other sites of concern located all across the coast in Massachusetts. We need a proactive planning and permitting effort that identifies those sites and that takes action to protect people in the future. If this decision was being made in that context, we wouldn't be here today. It would have been buttoned up 20 years ago, and we would be working on how to mitigate this site. That is the direction we believe that we should go in, and we would very much welcome the opportunity to work with state officials on that kind of proactive approach that uses this as a sample for why we need this regional approach, because this is not the only site of concern. But one thing that we would guess is that the ash landfills, and the other sites that are industrial in nature and utilize chemicals along the coast and pose risks, most of them are located in communities of environmental justice. And that is of equal concern. And these are neighborhoods where people don't have the resources to come in and rebuild their homes over and over. They don't have millions of dollars to do that. These are their homes, they want to live here, they have neighborhoods that they've been in for a long time. So we all have a responsibility to partner with the people living here and to protect the resources that are here for future generations. And we look forward to working with the Governor and with DEP on that approach. Thank you.
Deb Panetta, she's chairwoman of the Saugus Board of Selectmen. Deb, who's a staunch fighter and a great partner here.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you all for coming. Yes, my name is Deborah Panetta, and I am the chairperson of the Saugus Board of Selectmen. It's important that you all know that the Selectmen have continuously voted a policy saying no more ash emissions in this critically sensitive area. We have an unlined ash landfill, something that would never, ever be allowed today in an area of critical environmental concern. You've heard that this landfill was supposed to be closed in 1996, over 20 years ago, with the grassy seed. We have asked over and over again to Wheelabrator representatives, what is your closure date? We haven't received one. We need a date from Wheelabrator. When are you going to close? Not only has the Saugus Selectmen, top officials saying no more ash emissions, our town meeting also voted a similar resolution of no more ash emissions in that critically sensitive area. And it's going on to deaf ears. We hope that the DEP steps up, does the right thing, and say no more expansion. It's counterintuitive to what they're supposed to be doing. They're supposed to be closing that ash landfill, not opening it back up for another 39 acres for it just to close again. It's the wrong thing to do. We're sending the wrong message. So again, we're hoping that the DEP does the right thing, because I can tell you that Saugus officials, you'll hear from Revere officials, we want that landfill to be closed. Thank you.
Another one of our women who has fought valiantly with us is Cindy Lupi from Clean Water Action.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Cindy Lupi. I'm the New England Director for Clean Water Action, and we're very pleased to be here today to stand up for health, to stand up for justice, and to stand up for an end to the assault that this facility is placing in this region. We are very aware that this is a facility that's been operating for 40 plus years, and it's been accepting waste from the surrounding communities, trash from Boston, from Winthrop, where I live, from the entire region. And what happens is that trash is burned and the toxics in it leach into the ash and leach into the area. There isn't enough testing to know exactly what's going on in the aquatic environment, but we know it's not good. We know that the toxic chemicals in that ash include some of the most dangerous known to human health, including dioxins, furans, lead, mercury, selenium, arsenic. We know these are some of the best studied chemicals that exist. We know the science is strong, linking them to increased incidence of cancer, of learning disabilities and behavioral disorders, of reproductive disorders. So we are very proud to stand here today with Rep. Vincent and all of our allies in the Alliance to call for justice, to call for an end to the health assault in this region, and really to urge the governor and the DEP to do the right thing and deny the expansion of this facility. Thank you.
And with that, we'll have our city councilor, and he also is the ward councilor for this area. He's also been very vocal and very helpful, and he's a good friend to Revere, Councilor John Powers.
Thank you, Rosalie. Good morning, everyone. This facility never should have been allowed in the first place, from day one. We're sitting on a very valuable water resource, and anyone that doesn't believe in global warming should have been down here 2 weeks ago when I tried to get from Revere Street to the Point of Pines over this highway. It was impassable, not allowed. Just look at the height of that. And they want to go higher. That right now is 1.5 times higher than the houses over here on Riverside. Totally wrong. They come around every once in a while with their checkbooks, and they go to town hall or city hall, and they say, well, here we want to build a playground, we want to give you money for your recreation programs, we want to help the city. But the irony of the whole thing is, the kids that are using those playgrounds right now, the people that are in their recreation programs, whether they're senior citizens or younger, they're going to be affected if this is allowed by the DEP and our governor to go forward. I ask right now that the DEP and the governor look at this very closely, and the ultimate decision be no. To do otherwise would be inviting shame in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Thank you.
I would love if the governor and the commissioner of DEP could come down and actually visit these sites in person and not just to tour the Wheelabrator dog and pony show that they're exposed to on a pretty regular basis, because we'll show them what is really happening here, and it doesn't take a rocket scientist to look over here and know that this is wrong. But our next speaker is our Revere resident, another champion, Elle Baker. Elle's been doing a lot of work on this. She actually had a paper on this, and she can explain a little bit more.
Hi, thanks to all of you for being here today. My name is Elle Baker. I'm a resident in Revere. I actually grew up in East Saugus, just down the street from what was formerly Resco, now Wheelabrator. And you can see in the background that over the years, this mountain has grown to 50-foot high ash landfill, unbeknownst to many of the people that live in the surrounding community, including myself, up until just a few years ago, when I was alerted to an expansion of an ash landfill, and then I started to dig into what does that really mean? What is Wheelabrator and what do they do? So yes, they are a waste to energy facility. They do take our trash and they do create energy from that, but there are residual effects. The residual effects is they create ash from burning the trash. That ash, approximately 10% of that is that most hazardous part. 90%, the bottom ash, also hazardous, but not to the same degree. So in this case, in this state and in this country, what we do is we combine the fly ash with the bottom ash into one mixture. It's then put in the landfill, and then the leachate is tested. The ash is not tested in the facility. The ash is not tested in the landfill. The water runoff is what's tested. So we've asked numerous times to find out what does that really mean? And is that leaching out into the waterways, which are obviously right on the shore? And there's a lot of dangerous materials in the ash. Cadmium, lead, arsenic, dioxin, which is one of the main chemicals that cause cancer that is produced. It's a man-made chemical produced, and it is a major factor in increasing cancer rates. So we know that these things are in the ash. To what degree and how much of that is leaching into our community, we don't know the answer to that. We have asked through the MEPA process as a community to have a full environmental impact report completed. An overwhelming amount of you, many of you are here today, took the time, wrote your letters, told your stories, voiced your concerns to the DEP, and just want to know the answers. What really is in the ash? And that was denied. A full environmental impact report was not required to move forward with the preliminary approval of expansion. Then we had another community meeting, which we were given the opportunity to again voice our opinions. And we do hope that all of the comments are taken into consideration, that the community does have concerns, that we want to know what's in the ash. We want to know more about how this is being tested. This facility has been here for 40 years. That's when the testing methods were incorporated. We also know that it took legislation
for Wheelabrator to actually put scrubbers on the smokestacks, which you can see behind us here. So for years that technology was available, but it took legislation to force Wheelabrator to actually facilitate it here right in this facility. So when we did that, it's great because it makes the air a little cleaner, but it makes the ash much dirtier because anything that would have been going up in the air is now being captured in the fly ash. So again, since that's happened, has any of the testing methods changed? Thank you all for being here. Appreciate your time.
So we can open it up for questions. Does anyone have any questions?
I have a question. Why can't we find out for sure what's in the water?
Well, I think they're
I've been
supposed.
wondering that for 4 or 5 years.
Well, they're supposed to be doing ground, and the state's supposed to do it, and they're not.
Here, because the facility existed before the testing, like groundwater testing, for instance, requirements were put in place, they got grandfathered. So instead of having a site assignment that they would have had to get from the Board of Health in Saugus, and the Board of Health probably would have required all of this kind of testing, Mass DEP issued a consent order in '89 that said, all right, you're not doing what you're required to do now. We're going to let you run till '96, and then we're going to close you. But then they never closed them. So my argument would be yes, that this facility is in violation of federal regulations, federal solid waste regulations. However, Mass DEP's position is because they issued that consent order, it's all okay. Again, every other facility in Massachusetts has groundwater monitoring. Why is this one not? Why does this one not?
Every other facility has a liner, and this one does not. Why is that? We should ask them that as well.
Yeah.
Every other landfill does not sit in the middle of a wetland in an area of critical environmental concern. All the others are state-of-the-art, double liner, buffered, not near any homes, but not this one. And there's a neighborhood, by the way, the Riverside neighborhood was here before the plant. So when I heard someone once say that, why would you build a house there if you saw it? Well, guess what? Those neighbors were there before Wheelabrator built their plant. So because we're an environmental justice community, and you can see, all you can see, we have the airplanes that are flying over, we have thousands of cars that go into Boston and then use our streets. We have the trains that go here, we have the subway, and we have the oil farms. So I guess they say, so let's give them a little bit more. Let's give them some ash, then we have it all. I mean, it's a disgrace, and it's very upsetting because the average person looks at this and says, it can't happen. And guess what? My gut tells me it's going to.
My hope is that this permit will not be granted and this facility will close.
And if I could add one quick remark, there's also legislation that's pending in the State House right now that would require the examination of environmental justice concerns very formally as a mandate around these kinds of planning and facility decisions. And that is exactly what is needed here. We need that leadership from the governor. The legislature should not be having to take steps to require that the governor use common sense and frankly stand up for the health of low-income communities of color and other folks who live around this facility.
The Baker administration officials take money from Wheelabrator. This month alone, Karen Polito took $350 from Wheelabrator officials. Governor Baker took $250. The money that they sprinkled throughout the town of Saugus has silenced most Saugus elected and appointed officials. For $116,000 in tax dollars for those 268 acres, we're being sold out at the highest levels. The Office of Campaign and Political Finance will show you the money. It's no coincidence that Martin Suberg, the Commissioner of DEP, is from Shrewsbury, that Matt Beaton, the environmental secretary is from Shrewsbury, and Karen Polito is from Shrewsbury, and there is a landfill in Shrewsbury that has a liner and a cover and is properly monitored and maintained. But those same officials are the same ones that are in the governor's ear to keep this place open, a situation that wouldn't be allowed anyplace else in the state. If you have the time, follow the money. That's what we did when we got the scrubbers. If you follow the money. It's sad that the town of Saugus sells out cheap. It's sad that our governor will sell out cheap. But fortunately, we have people like Rep. Vincent who will carry this fight forward, and hopefully she'll be able to convince her colleagues, and hopefully Conservation Law Foundation will sue the Commonwealth when they allow this inevitable decision to take place. And I hope all of you will join me and bring out your checkbooks to the Conservation Law Foundation to support that effort, because it will happen, that they will get that permit. It's not going to be tonight. Thank you for being here.
Just hit 30 years down here, and I don't find it any coincidence that 10 years ago I got diagnosed with MS, which is a heavy metal toxin disease. And does it have anything to do with this? I have no idea, but I know it certainly couldn't help. And like I said, the increase in the airplanes is at least quadrupled since I've been down here, and I think we've been blasted enough between the diesel buses and the trains and the planes that Wheelabrator is just like the last boulder on the back. They need to close this down.
Hi, my name is Bob Upton. I'm with the Revere Chamber of Commerce, and I'm also a Revere beach enthusiast. And I'm, of course, very concerned and interested in what's happening here at the Rumney Marsh as it pertains to the water quality issues here at the beach, on the Atlantic Ocean and this east coast of Massachusetts. I know it's very important that the Wheelabrator folks and the state is taking a look at what they're going to be doing with expanding the ash fill here. I'm not sure that that's the right thing to be doing.
Absolutely should not expand. The landfill should definitely not expand, as far as I know. And I'm sure my father, if he was here, he'd be telling you the same thing. Thank you.
I'm with Friends of Belle Isle Marsh. I'm Gail Miller, I'm one of the board members. And we obviously are partnering with this alliance, and we also are on record as opposing the environmental degradation here of this area of critical environmental concern. And I think we need to call on the governor and the lieutenant governor and MEPA and just all the environmental agencies that the time is long overdue. This plant should have been closed down in 1996. And I think the time is now. We're dealing with climate change and all the other onslaughts of environmental, awareness that we have now, and so we have no choice but to do the right thing here. And we are absolutely opposed to the expansion of this landfill. It's an unlined landfill. And the leachates that are in this, environment, the immediate environment, are just detrimental to fish and wildlife, and not to mention people. So.
All right, well, I just want to say thank you to everyone who attended our press conference here today. We're here because we wanted to make sure that everyone was educated to the fact that if you see behind us, that ash landfill, they're looking to expand and put another 500,000 tons of ash in an area of critical environmental concern. So I hope that people get together and call the governor's office, let them know that we cannot afford to have additional ash in this area. It's unconscionable and unacceptable. So please, let's work together to end this environmental injustice. Thank you.